Hello, hello, my love. I hope this finds you doing so well. Happy my birthday week, month, season to you all. Typical Leo, I gotta say. Thank you. Thank you for the birthday well wishes. This week, I wanted to share something a little different than what we usually do here on Feminist Wellness. This week, I'm sharing an interview with Dr. Tyler Panzner. He's going to introduce himself, talk about all his nerdy bona fides, and I want you to know why I'm bringing him on the show. First of all, he's the first dude on the show. That's kind of fun. And he's a nerd's nerd. Like, dude is like a nerd's nerd. And if you're new to the show and you're wondering if that's a compliment, it's a major compliment. So, hats off to you, Dr. Tyler. I brought him on because sometimes it's not your thoughts, right? Sometimes it's more than your thoughts. Back in episode 190, we talked about this. This is what I call toddler. So, like most of us listening to the show have either met or at some point were toddlers. And I'm just going to say most of us because I don't want to make assumptions. And you know how toddlers are. What they need to nap and look at sunshine and play and nap and have snack and have water and play and nap. They have really basic needs that, sure, they overcomplicate and dramatize, but who doesn't? And we, as taller toddlers, forget that at our core, we're just those wee ones. We're just those sweet little baby versions of us that need delicate care and deserve sweet and delicate care, like naps, like getting enough rest and enough water and time with friends and playing outside and sunshine in our face first thing in the morning. And we deserve that. We need that. It is vital. And instead, what happens is we get so swept up in this capitalist do machine, we forget to be. We forget to step into intentionality and presence. Sometimes it's not that we forget, it's that early on in childhood, when our nervous systems were getting their settings, it wasn't safe to rest, right? So we learned not to. We learned to deny our wants and needs and feels and toddlerness for so many smart reasons. And I am here to encourage each and every one of us, if we want to step out of emotional outsourcing and to live lives we love, it behooves us to not just stay in our cognition and not just do thought work, and also not to just spin around in doing somatic work and breath work and spiritual work, but to also ask ourselves, did I drink too much coffee? Did I take too much B vitamins? Is that why I'm irritable? Why I'm antsy? Have I had enough water? Right. So we need to ask those toddler questions. Episode 190 is all for you if you're like, wait, what? And the reason Dr. Tyler's coming on is because he talks about genetics. I don't want to give too much of it away. It's really fun. We talk about genetics and the role our genes play in our emotional, physical, mental health and wellness. And so it's really important to understand who we are as whole animals before we start labeling ourselves, categorizing ourselves, telling stories about ourselves, right? We get to dive deeper. Yeah, it's really important to look at all aspects of our wellness. So that's what we're doing today with Dr. Tyler, taking a deep dive. If you listen to this episode and you're like, ooh, I want more, he was kind enough to actually read all of my genetics. And since I love giving presents for my birthday, I'm giving a special present at the end. I will give you the URL. You can head right there and download a conversation between him and myself where he goes through my genetics. You don't get my whole genome, but you get a whole lot of it. So we're going to talk about COMT, SUOX. It's really very interesting. Of course, I say this in the conversation, but I want to say it here. Genetics is not the end all be all. Epigenetics is a huge thing, the role of our environment, right? And what genes our environment is turning on and off, right? The expression of our genes is a huge thing. And we cannot just say that our genes are our destiny. That's really reductionist. And Dr. Pansner is not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm just being really clear that his work is part of the bigger picture. Yeah. And I will also say, since doing what he recommended, I wanted to do it for 3 months before releasing this episode because that seemed ethical as a start. I feel way better in some ways that like are were unimaginable before meeting with him. So I will also say this very clearly. He is not paying me. I asked him to come on the show because I find his work really interesting. He gives a referral code at the end. You can put in feminist wellness to get like 10% off or something. I don't make any money off that. Right? That's not my jam. This is not like it's all above board is what I'm saying. So, wanted to say those things really clearly. It's a really nerdy episode. I really hope you enjoy nerding out on it cuz what do I love to do more for my birthday than nerd out, right? Right. All right. Hope you enjoy it. Ciao. Well, hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Cannot wait to share some game-changing health information that I bet all of you guys listening have not heard about before. Appreciate to have this platform to share my mission that I think is a necessary and overlooked component of health optimization and just figuring out how to not feel so blah and blah each day of your important life.
I love that. And I love that you said each day of your important life, right? Because each day really does matter. Why
Yeah.
not make the absolute best of it? Yay. Well, I'd love it if you could introduce yourself. I find we do such a better job introducing ourselves than anyone else. So, who are you?
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Tyler Panzner. I'm a PhD scientist that is trained in cell biology, so how cells function in health and disease, and pharmacology. So this is the study of how substances affect cells. It's different from pharmacy. I get that question a lot. Pharmacy is more so taking existing knowledge about drugs and medications and working with doctors and figuring out and fulfilling prescriptions. Pharmacology, I'm the guy in the lab coat, or I was the guy in the lab coat with the pipettes, working with mice, dissecting tumors. I'm the one doing the research, figuring out how to make new drugs, how these things work. How can we modify our cellular behavior away from disease and towards the state of thriving, as I like to call it? I studied anxiety, depression, all different types of neuroscience. Definitely my number one research interest. Ended up doing my thesis work on breast cancer metastasis, inflammation, and really got interested in personalized medicine when I used my 23andMe data and I dove deep into that. And I was able to resolve so many of my chronic health issues by figuring out exactly what nutrients my cells can't absorb as well, can't transport as well, can't use as well, and on the flip side, what am I sensitive to? What do I absorb too easily and not break down well enough? Looking at those genetics. So no guessing, figured out where my molecular weak points were, supported that naturally, and I was able to avoid a lot of medications. And I did that for years with friends and family, made it into a business now, holistic genetic health solutions. And there's a lot of companies out there, and we could get into this more about where I'm different in certain aspects, but just the way my brain sees these patterns and the pharmacology aspect. I work with people every day that are sicker on their supplements.
Mm.
Doctors know their field of expertise, but
Hmm.
they don't know supplements because they are not pharmacologists. So I'm on a mission to educate not just regular people, but doctors, health coaches, that you can really mess people up with a supplement that really helps someone else.
Yeah, it's wild. I'd always, when I was starting someone on theanine, so L-theanine is well respected as a
Yep.
powerful anti-anxiety, but there is that one in however majillion people who has a paradoxical effect, like
Yep.
with Benadryl,
Yep.
right? So most people take a Benadryl anticholinergic drug and right,
Yep.
you pass out or you calm down at least, but that one patient who's up all night twitching, anxious, heart racing, freaking out, considering going to the ER. Yeah, I think if we all had access to and training in how to look at SNPs, at single nucleotide
Yep.
polymorphisms, and we'll have you explain more of what that is before folks like me put someone on a supplement regimen, right? I'm doing it based on the size. This one modulates TH1, this one modulates TH17, bah, 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 bah. But how interesting to individualize it.
Well, and also
Yeah.
those supplements can help TH1, TH2, but what other mechanisms do they have? Every supplement has multiple mechanisms. So
Sure.
you may be skewing towards TH1, but
Right.
what if that supplement also is an iron chelator or a copper chelator, and you
Huh.
have no
Right.
idea about that? I
Sure.
work with women all the time. Well, women are usually more prone to anemia. Their
Sure.
hair's falling out. No one knows why. Their doctors don't know why. It's the natural herb that they're on for their gut health. No one knows that it's chelating copper and iron. It doesn't say it on the bottle, and people are not pharmacologists.
Right.
It's about doing
Yeah.
no harm first and foremost. And I see that all the time. And it's not negligence. People
No,
aren't
no.
aware of these things, but think
Right.
about it. How much training do medical doctors have to go through in order to prescribe medications? How much education does a holistic practitioner need to go through to recommend supplements? Virtually none. It's the
Oh yeah.
Wild West.
It's frightening.
Very frightening.
It's frightening. Yeah, UCSF put us through the ringer when I was learning pharmacology,
Yep.
pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics. I mean, it's
But
UCSF, right? They
even
weren't
that,
messing around.
those are more general pharmacology
Sure.
concepts.
Yeah.
But, from what I've seen, and I've talked to naturopaths that have gotten training, like I have a 12-week holistic genetic health mastery program where I'm training practitioners, and I've had some naturopaths in there, and they're
Yeah.
like, you weren't kidding. Like, we weren't trained on any, like, we know
Wow.
the very, very basics of these things, but that's why I call what I do hyper personalized. It's not
Mm,
about let's ship out millions of DNA kits for $200 a pop, give you a pre-made report and figure it out yourself.
right.
That's why I have a one-on-one call with every person I work with. I
Amazing.
streamline it, and it's not just what you need, it's what you should avoid. How do you know what you should avoid unless you really understand how these nutrients are working in the body? And again, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about MTHFR, but everyone
Sure.
just says
Yeah.
MTHFR, take more methyl vitamins. I
Right.
see so many people over methylated. They feel worse because they're given
Huh.
so much of these methyl vitamins. I
Right.
don't tolerate them very well. I feel horrible. Doctors just say take more, more, more. Just because it helps one gene, it could clash with three others. And if you're not cross referencing looking deep enough, you could do more harm than good.
It makes sense as I hear you say, it's like everything, every deeper layer of learning in functional and holistic medicine that I do. I'm like, it makes
Yeah.
so much sense,
Yep.
right? It makes logical sense. What would you say to those who say that well, first of all, before I was about to go deep, deep, deep nerd, will you, for folks who are like, wait, girl, what is this? What is a
Hmm.
SNP? What is a single
Yes.
nucleotide polymorphism, please? Let's go like
Yes.
wicked basic cell biology.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, DNA is the code of life. It's a bunch of letters, A, T, C, or G. These four letters spell our genetic code. Our genetic code is instructions on how to make proteins. Everything that happens in your cells is done by proteins. They are the workhorses of your cells. Whether it's to take up magnesium through your gut into your body, that's done by a protein. Whether it's to transport vitamin D throughout your body, that's done by a protein. Whether it's for serotonin to bind a receptor so you feel happy, that's done by a protein. All of these proteins are made by genes. That's a fact. Every gene is mutated. It can be mutated in tens of thousands of different areas. So everyone listening here, it's not if you have mutations. We all have millions and millions of mutations. Not every mutation. So a mutation, a SNP, instead of an A, you have a C. Instead of a G, you have a T. One misspelling. And that instruction manual is how you make the protein. So let's just say that protein that transports vitamin D throughout your body, it has to bind vitamin D. A certain area of it is like, think of it like a super glue. It sticks to the vitamin D. Now, if there's a misspelling in the DNA in the area that gets turned into that super glue area, it may not stick as well. So what does that mean? That means it can't bind vitamin D as well. And then you look at all the peer-reviewed studies, that exact mutation that many of my clients have, many of you listening have, probably have multiple there. It's linked to lower vitamin D levels in the blood. And then it's also linked to vitamin D related diseases. So whether it's anxiety, depression, autoimmunity, COVID-19. So this is why a lot of people try to dismiss genetics But we have the data showing these mutations are in fact linked to lower vitamin D. They're also linked to a higher risk of vitamin D related diseases. And when you follow the logic, well, why wouldn't that be the case? So
Right.
these misspellings, but a gene can be misspelled in multiple areas. So if you have one SNP, may not be a big deal. If you have 15 SNPs on that gene, they're additive together. So that
Mm.
gene is barely functioning. And whatever that does, whether it's sense serotonin, whether it's activate vitamin D, your body will, for the rest of your life, will always not be able to do that as well. We can go into epigenetics in a little bit as well, which is very important. But I think a lot of people that try to focus on epigenetics, they don't really understand genetics. And that can really be, I'm not saying it's the only thing that matters, but I just think a lot of people aren't looking at it deeply enough in the right way, utilizing the right nutrients to, again, first off, do no harm. Second off, is dress as many mutations as possible with the lowest number of natural ingredients.
Right. 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 And I love that because polypharmacy is such an issue.
Yep.
Right. And whether
Yep.
it's green pharmacy or chemical pharmacy, right? I can't tell you the number of times patients have walked in with like a suitcase full of supplements. They're like,
Yep.
this is what I take before breakfast.
And I will
And it,
guarantee you, many of those things are working against them. Because here's the thing,
mm,
too. They may say, oh, I'm only on 8 supplements. Well, each supplement has 10 ingredients. So you're
sure.
on 80 things. I am not a fan of big supplement blends. I
Mm,
take people off the wrong, I change people's lives by just getting them off the wrong supplements. Someone with anxiety comes to me. They're on things like rhodiola rosea, fenugreek, methylene blue, curcumin, piperine. These
right.
all slow down the breakdown of adrenaline. And no,
Oh, wow.
and the doctor put them on, or their coach put them on 6 of these things. Of course, they're using them for inflammation. They're using them for things like TH1 or TH2. They're using them for mitochondrial biogenesis, which is great, but you're not aware. You put someone with pre-existing anxiety on 6 things that are further raising their adrenaline. No wonder why they're off the deep end. And I'll ask them, how long has your anxiety been worse? Probably for the last 6 months.
Right.
When did you
Right.
start these new supplements? 6 months
6 months
ago.
ago. Right. Right. Right.
And then they'll be told you're detoxing, which can be a thing, but you don't detox for 6 months. You're on the
No.
wrong supplement
Right.
that's
Right. Right.
jacking up your adrenaline and it's making you so much more anxious. I'm telling you, I see this every single day in my practice. And these are coming from, very notable naturopaths or functional medicine
Sure.
practitioners. But again, they don't know the supplements
Right.
deeply enough. I've dedicated my life to this. And
Yeah.
again, it's just crazy to see how much unnecessary suffering there is because the supplement industry is massive. And what is a drug by definition? A drug is anything that alters physiology.
Sure.
So by definition, these supplements are drugs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Pharmacology, whether it's a drug target or supplement target, they're just cellular targets, right? So I view
Right.
them as all the same,
Right.
especially when we're concentrating supplements. Take this 20x herbal blend or take
Right.
this chemically modified curcumin that's 3,000 times more
Oof.
absorbed. At what point is that
Right.
considered a drug?
Right. Right. Yeah. And there's a little part. So I come from herbalism first,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went into Western medicine and then loop back around for
Yeah.
functional medicine. And so as an herbalist, I learned in the wise woman tradition, right, to use simplers, to use one herb at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make a nettles infusion, see how that feels for a couple weeks. Maybe we'll add red raspberry.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it is really wild to read the back of supplements and just see that there's 6,000 herbs, which
Yeah.
all held together with what? Licorice? Like, how are these even
Which also
synergistically?
licorice also raises adrenaline, by the way, too. So that's another one too. Yeah.
Right.
Which I
Yeah.
think, and again, it's not that these are bad for everyone, right? You know what I mean? But
Sure.
yeah.
But again, to your point of individualized medicine, and just to sort of pause and speak again to why you're here. I talk so much about the social determinants of health, our nervous system based determinants of health. the things that keep us stuck in the old bind with our mental health, our hormones, our sleep, our et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so while we're doing the work to shift our mindsets, to regulate our nervous systems, to do that deeper emotional work, we have to remember that we're humans in a human body, right?
Mhm.
And so I get to this point where I sometimes see clients who are beating themselves up like, God, I'm doing all of the things to
Yep.
feel better, right? To have better mental health, right? I put the blue screens away and I'm going to bed on time and I'm doing my thought work and I'm doing all the somatic practice, but I feel like flaming hot Cheetos. What's
Well,
happening?
it's funny that that sounds like 95% of my clients because
Right?
I'm not the first. You don't go to see a holistic
No,
genetic
come on.
scientist. I'm
Yeah,
the end
no.
of the road for most
Yeah,
of my clients.
right.
And why, let's just say a mutation, 25% of the population has it by databases, but three-quarters of my clients have it because I'm artificially selecting for
Sure.
people with worse genetics. Why have none of the, and I listen, functional medicine is light years ahead of conventional, but it's still X symptom protocol, mold
100%.
protocol, anxiety
100%.
protocol.
Yep.
It's not catered. Trust me. I mean, yeah, we're on the same page here. These
Yeah.
natural things are better
We're
than
doing our
medications,
best, but
but it's
yeah.
still, I don't have a mold protocol. I will build a U protocol. And you'd be shocked. I've had people, I've had a client with MS and someone else with anxiety, someone else with psoriasis. Genetically speaking, they're on fairly similar protocols because I look at pathways. The vitamin D pathway is linked to
Mm,
virtually any disease you could think of. So people ask me,
huh.
well, what about these genes is linked to fertility? Well, all of them. I think of things rather, I make cells work better. What pathways need more support? Which ones are overactive? Let's dial those up and down and
Right.
watch because your brain, your mental health issues, your gut issues, your skin issues, they're all connected. Yet we
Right.
go to different specialists for all of them. They don't collaborate together.
Right.
So again, the functional medicine, again, it's still X protocol. And
Hmm.
why has nothing worked for you thus far? Because what's the one thing no one has looked at properly? The genetics and the supplementation. And
Right.
that's my wheelhouse. And
Right.
that's why when people have seen, they've been to Mayo Clinic, they've been to these big institutions because they're not looking deep enough. So yeah, a little bit of a tangent there, but
No, but
just
I love the
love this stuff
tangent.
so much.
It's and part of why I invited a huge part of why I invited you on is your absolute ridiculous passion for this
Yep.
level of nerditry, which like
Nerditry. Love that one. I'm
right
keeping that one
nerd.
in my
Oh
noggin.
yeah,
Yeah,
always,
nerditry. Love
always,
that.
all the nerditry. Yeah, we'll make t-shirts. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have both of our faces on it. I think it'd
Awesome.
be good, and then a double helix in the middle.
Ooh.
That's amazing.
Maybe we could be the histones, unwinding the DNA too. That could be cool.
Love it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great plan. All
Yeah.
right, so keep an eye out for our merch.
The merch shop.
That's amazing. So I want to make sure we talk two big things: epigenetics,
Yep.
because my people I talk about mitochondria. Wait, important question. What is your favorite organelle?
Ooh.
Ooh,
I would probably have to say the endocytic transport system. I studied exosomes in my
ooh,
PhD.
ooh, yeah,
So I really love that. So these are what release little vesicles and how cells communicate with each other, if you guys that aren't aware. So the
yeah.
process of how you imagine sending little letters of mail across the body and other cells can pick them up. So how you take them in, read them, get what you need out of them, incorporate that into your own cell, and then what you can send out to your other cells to let other cells know what they should be doing.
That's so cool. Does it make me like super basic that I'm really wildly into mitochondria? Are you like,
No, hey, what I
kind of
tell
basic?
people, whatever dumps your dopamine. That's how I look at it. Whatever dumps your dopamine, go for it. Whatever music does it, whatever that, whatever. That's the name of the game at the end of the day.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Whatever dumps your dopamine.
whatever
Yeah,
healthy
yeah, yeah.
thing dumps the dopamine, of course.
Sure. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Of course, of course. That's really funny. Okay, so I that's gonna take me on a different tangent. We'll come back to epigenetics and back to talking about my genome. So dopamine. This is a thing I hear all the time. People often say, sometimes I feel so low or I have ADHD. How do I, and air quotes, folks, like bump my dopamine? How do I get a dopamine hit?
Yep. Yep.
Can you please debunk the
Yeah.
hit thing? And yeah, let them hear it from
Yeah.
not me.
Yeah. And this is where you need to think about mechanisms. So the methylation process, which I'm sure we'll go into more when we talk
Yeah.
about epigenetics, it's how you regulate epigenetics. It's also how you make neurotransmitters. So think of that as the neurotransmitter factory. So in a factory, you need ingredients to make these things. So you can take things like L-tyrosine or phenylalanine. These are the amino acids that your factory, the methylation system, turns into dopamine to be released. I'm not the biggest fan of that for a lot of people because you raise dopamine, you also raise adrenaline. So you see how they usually go hand in hand together. Then there's the methylation system itself, the factory. How well is the factory working? I like to have people to figure out, again, which methylation support you need, which step, which nutrients. Is it a methylfolate or is it SAMe or is it a trimethylglycine? What do you need to support your system so the factory workers can do their job the best? You may
Mm,
not need more ingredients. Your workers may just be lazy, aka mutated or not fueled properly.
right.
Then you have, once you release the neurotransmitters, once you release the dopamine, there's things that break down the dopamine. Things like the COMT gene, which we'll talk about in a bit, how well you break down dopamine. I break down dopamine and adrenaline 4 times slower than a normal person due to my mutations. I'll give you
Interesting.
a little spoiler now.
Yeah.
You actually have a double mutation too. We'll dive into that more,
On
but
COMT?
I could tell
Huh.
the second I started talking to you, you had this. This is one of the most easiest to predict. These people are usually type A, very extroverted, very conversational. It correlates with high achievers. I think a lot of podcasters, influencers, that higher dopamine to want to just put yourself out there and do that. Now, that can protect against depression, but it's also more at risk for anxiety because
Mm.
then when we dump that adrenaline, we break down adrenaline slow as well. So overall, these can be people that are very sensitive. If you listening now throughout your life, this has been me throughout my life. It was always Tyler, calm down. Tyler, stop overthinking it. Tyler, just let it go. I bet you're nodding. You're the same way, I'm
No,
guessing.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Sorry.
but
This isn't insanity. Go on.
yeah, they call it the worriers, neuroticism, overthinking,
Mm,
but also highly creative. So when I'm
right.
not stressed, I have higher dopamine levels than usual. That makes me more creative, more able to think outside the box. People ask me, how'd you learn to think outside the box? And I always just say, what box?
Exactly. Yeah,
I never
me too.
saw the box.
No.
And part of that's due to the dopamine.
Yeah. I tripped
Um,
over the box though, because I was going so fast. Just
well, again, that high
that's right.
adrenaline, the
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
high.
Yeah.
So
Boom.
if you're one
Right.
of those people that you could get stressed easier and you stay stressed longer than you think you should, that adrenaline's floating around.
Wow.
So lithium is something that really changed my life as well. Lithium ortate, any of you
Orotate. Yeah.
listening that do have a lot of stress, fight or flight issues, get 1 milligram of lithium ortate. I love the Pure Encapsulations brand. Try that any time of day with a little bit of food. Within 30 minutes, it changed my life. Quiet in my
Mm.
brain. And now how this works is that COMT gene that's too slow.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than taking a Xanax to blast your body with calming signals,
Right.
even lemon balm, which is great, that raises GABA. It calms the body down. Lithium helps you break down adrenaline faster. It speeds up COMT. So think about this. It's literally helping you lower the adrenaline in your body. I've not come across anything else that does that. All the
Huh.
other calming stuff, which I do love, like the taurine, glycine,
Yeah.
I love those things.
Right.
But this gets rid of the actual adrenaline. And it also helps your dopamine 2 receptor, which I have mutated. It actually also helps you sense dopamine better. So it doesn't raise dopamine levels, but it helps you sense the dopamine better
Wow.
while lowering the adrenaline. So you can feel more motivated, but not as scared and frazzled overall.
Wow. And that's just 1 milligram of.
The first time I tried it was 5 milligrams before bed. That next day was life-changing for me. 1 milligram still has a noticeable effect, but I tell people lowest effective dose. I'm a big
Right. Yeah, of
supplement guy.
course.
I'm a fan of numerous supplements that are targeted based on your genes.
Right.
No mega doses of anything. Because guess what? You don't need mega
Yeah.
doses if you're hitting the right pathways, multiple of them, minorly to moderately.
Yeah. Which makes so much sense and is again returning to like a wise woman herbal sort of framework, right? Versus heroic dosing,
Yeah.
which like having been trained in both, I'm going to go low and slow because I've never hurt anybody
Yep.
low and slow. I
Yep.
might still like do heroic doses of like echinacea or something,
Yep.
right? If I like feel like crap and have to get on a plane, but like low and slow.
Well, and
Amazing.
that too, it's, when I work with people, sometimes I'll have them start 10 things at once. And now people will say, oh, that's so many things. I'm like, well, listen, aside from a good multivitamin catered to your genes, I use individual sole one ingredient products.
Right.
So you were taking two, three things before that each had 10 ingredients. You were on 30 things before. Now you're going to be on actually 10 things. So it may seem like more bottles there, but also I work with, like, I used to think I was the one in a billion, the most sensitive person ever that responded weird to supplements. Turns out most of my clients are just like me. But
Mm,
since I dove so deep and cross referenced everything, I've had so many clients like, I'm so afraid to start them all together. I'm like, trust me, try it. If there's any issues, shoot me an email. We'll pull it
right.
back. 95% of the time, because no science is perfect, 95% of the time, they're like, holy freaking crap. This is an entirely new world for me because
Wow.
I'm making sure people aren't sensitive to supplements. They're sensitive to the wrong supplements for their body. And
Right.
my job is to make sure I'm educating you about what supplements aren't good for you. And of course, not putting you on any that I think aren't good for you. So this perfect harmony of all these nutrients you need, while none of them are raising adrenaline, the lithium is lowering your adrenaline. You get the right nutrients in. So you feel safe and you feel empowered and you're nourishing your cells.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, what about folks like, so I don't ever feel like I feel my supplements.
Yep. I get that a lot too. Yep. Yep.
I like take fistfuls of stuff because I kind of just logic and science without the
Yep.
genetics, right? Has
Yep.
told me I should.
Yep.
Where
Yeah.
do
And
you start with
part,
folks like me? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, part of that sometimes I've had a lot of people that say that and then getting on the right ones, they're like, okay, this is a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
One thing I'm sure you're aware could be, gut health, gut absorption of things, but I'm sure your gut health is pretty up there, if you're taking care of yourself, trying to do your best. That could be one aspect of that there. But a lot of times, if you don't feel melatonin supplements, maybe you don't need more melatonin. If you don't feel your CBD, maybe your endocannabinoid system doesn't need some support there. And again, really making sure it's what the body actually needs.
Right.
And then a lot of does come into, I'm not saying this is you,
Yeah. Yeah.
belief systems and things too, which you could go
Sure.
into as
Yeah.
well. Some people identify with being sick.
Yes.
It may serve them well. They may be getting more care from their loved ones if they're sick. And it
Hmm.
can be subconscious. I'm
Yeah.
a deeply spiritual man. I believe in all of these things. Genetics are just one aspect of it. I'll never claim supplements can outwork all that inner work. But from my point of view, how many therapists are there? There's a lot. How many people are doing what I'm doing? Very little to none the exact way I'm doing it, if you ask me.
Right.
So I'm just shining the light on a new modality. I mean, what is this inner deep healing everyone craves? It is epigenetics at the end of the day, more or less. And so I guess
Mm.
we can kind of go into that now.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you could define it, because I'm still
Yeah.
trying.
So genetics were the code of the DNA. So when you make that protein, it will always not work as well. So let's just say the TPH2 gene, the gene that makes serotonin,
Hmm.
let's just say that's mutated to work 50% as well your entire life. It'll never work better than that. That's a
Mm.
fact. That's a molecular
Right.
biology fact. But epigenetics means certain things, external factors, lifestyle factors, certain nutrients can make you make more or less of a gene. A lot of people like to use the word on or off. I like the word more or less.
Hmm.
So vitamin D, we know seasonal depression exists. Vitamin D, which you get from sunlight, Well, depending on how mutated you are, sometimes you
Right.
can't do that as well. I'm one of those people. But that vitamin D you make in your skin, it gets inside your cells, it binds a receptor that tells your cells, hey, go make Tyler more of the TPH2 protein. So even though I'm making more of that protein, it will always work half as well. So if I'm able to make double the amount of that protein and they're working half as well, technically, I'm back at 100%.
Right.
So if you have a few mutations, sunlight, cold plunge might get you where you need to be. But if you have 8 mutations there, it works 10% as well. I don't care what sunlight you get. I don't care what cold plunge
Mm,
you do. These are the
sure.
people that nothing works for. The epigenetics won't be able to outwork that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
hard to say exactly how common that is. But so the epigenetics is how much of the gene you're making. But when it comes to epigenetics, who's the one deciding? Who's the worker deciding how much of it you're making or not making of that protein? It's the methylation genes, the proteins. So your epigenetic capacity is dictated by proteins, which are
Mm,
made by genes, which are
mm-hmm.
mutated.
Right.
So your genetics dictate, in part, your epigenetic potential. So you see a lot of people just say, oh, the genetics don't matter. Like, just get sunshine, just go outside. It's like, if it was that easy, I wouldn't have a job. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now.
Right.
Because if you have a lot of mutations, you're going to need, if you can't make a certain nutrient that's used to turn on your genes, what are you going to do aside from figuring out what nutrient that is and take more of it on top of the sunlight, on top of the talk therapy, on top of
Right.
all of these things? So this is what I was saying. When people talk about, mold or heavy metals, they don't think it's a genetic thing, but your genetics dictate your sensitivity to
Yeah.
environmental factors.
Yeah.
If you have mutations in heavy metal detox genes, you're at a higher risk for heavy metal toxicity.
Right.
So is it really that the people that get sick from environmental things are ingesting that much more of the toxins, or are their bodies not as genetically capable of dealing with them or breaking them down? And I know the answer because I work with families that
Right.
family of 5, they live in a moldy house.
Right.
2 of them are bedridden.
Right.
The other 3 are fine. So please
Yeah.
explain to me then, how is it the mold's fault? You have people doing mold detoxes, parasite detoxes, like every quarter.
Oof.
That's not the root cause fix. Why
Right.
is your body such a good host for it?
Interesting. Which of course takes my brain towards two pathways when talking about epigenetics. One, the impact of trauma, if we
Yep,
could talk about that. And then
absolutely.
second, I was talking with a friend recently about the the increase in genetic conditions we're seeing in the newborn population in children, and Monsanto toxicity, right? And that pathway.
Those
So
de novo mutations. Yep,
yes,
yep.
exactly. So can we start with trauma?
Yeah, absolutely,
Please,
absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah, so what is trauma? Trauma is when, usually in childhood, when a stressor exceeds your own ability to cope with the stressor. That's why
Right.
most of it's in childhood. We know for a fact a lot of genetics dictate your sensitivity to trauma. That COMT gene I mentioned, it's linked to an increased startle response because higher adrenaline.
Sure.
I can't watch scary movies.
Oh no, me neither. No, no,
I,
thank you.
I I've
Mm-mm.
given my wife a bloody nose on accident because I
Oh
flinch,
no.
and because I
Oh
get so, it's
yeah.
not the gore, it's the jumpiness
Yep.
because my
Yeah.
adrenaline spikes
Mm-hmm.
so much. Now imagine that in the context of a young child,
Yeah.
volatile household,
Yeah.
unpredictable caregivers,
Sure.
or think about PTSD going out to war. Why
Right.
do only a fraction of people that go to war and experience the same things come back with trauma?
Right.
The genetics are a factor that people aren't even aware of. So genes related to stress response are linked to that.
Right.
So some event happens, and not all trauma is a one and done event. I think a lot of people's trauma, and hate to break it to you guys, everyone has trauma.
Yes.
There's no such thing as no trauma.
Right.
Um, some people have more severe trauma. It could be an acute major event that rattles the nervous system to a certain threshold,
Right.
and then epigenetics come into play. You have these genes get dysregulated. And what's really interesting, virtually every gene that's mutated that puts you at a higher risk for trauma, it gets further epigenetically dysregulated from trauma. So that COMT we mentioned, if it's slower genetically, like we have, we're more prone to being scared.
Mm-hmm.
We get traumatized. That gene gets turned down epigenetically. So you see now we have even higher adrenaline throughout our lives, which
Mm,
ends up turning into the hypervigilance that people have with trauma.
right.
So healing from trauma, it's undoing the epigenetic changes that occurred during the trauma. But again, who is switching the genes on and off? Who's dialing them up and down? The methylation system.
Right.
So everyone does all the talk therapy, which I'm a firm believer in, the
Yeah.
psychotherapy, somatic. I'm a massive believer in all of that.
Right.
But if your methylation system is heavily mutated, you're swimming against the current.
Mm,
You're the worker that's supposed to switch the lever and get your body epigenetics back to the healthy state. If that worker is genetically hardwired for your entire life to not work as well, why wouldn't you support that first while doing the talk therapy? And that's what I plan to do in the future,
right.
collaborate with psychiatrists and psychologists and mental health workers. I'm not saying that I've helped people with anxiety, depression all the time, get them off
Sure.
of their medications onto natural things with just what I do. And then you have therapists doing what they do without the supplements. Imagine combining both together.
Oh, it's magnificent.
It's
That's
combined, it's just
the dream come
stacking the
true,
cards
really.
in your favor.
Sure.
Why can
Sure.
people talk about their issues to therapists forever, long term, and things
Right.
don't change?
Right.
They talk about it, but the cells aren't properly flipping the switch, right? They're not. And again, if those workers aren't working as well, you live with
Right.
that trauma.
Right.
So the trauma also, it sits around the concept of mental health.
Yeah.
When it comes to anxiety, I like to separate it into two things. You have external triggers. My boss yelled at me. My friend's mad at me.
Sure.
My dog is sick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm low, like these external factors.
Right.
Now, if there were no external factors, there'd be no anxiety, right? But that's not reality. Then you have your internal biochemistry. What supplements did you take? So you see, but the trauma, the amygdala is the part of the brain for fear processing. The trauma, let's just say, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's just say you had a close call, like almost got attacked by a dog, or you got attacked by a
Sure.
dog when you were a child,
Yep.
and it really scared you.
Right.
Maybe you weren't actually going to die. Maybe it wasn't a vicious attack. Maybe you were 3 years old and the dog was just, maybe the dog kind of like knocked you down and was just
Yeah.
licking you and
Right. But it
imagine
was
you got
scary.
imagine a lick attack from a dog for like
Yeah.
5 minutes straight, and then your
Yeah.
parents find you sobbing,
Hmm.
unconsolable. You weren't actually,
Yeah.
or maybe you did almost die. Either
Sure.
or, a
Yeah.
child's brain won't be able to discern between the two.
Right.
The amygdala, due to these epigenetic changes, now when any dog's around you, or if you hear a dog barking as an adult, it triggers you.
Right.
That's an external trigger, but it's the rose tinted glasses we all wear based on our traumas. So I can't do as much of this. I want to do this type of deep work with people, but a little out of my wheelhouse. That's why I
Mm.
love like collaborating with people. Eventually, it's
Right.
all connected.
Right.
Only so much I can do. I'm focusing on the genetic side right now, but you see how identifying what your external triggers are a
Right.
massive thing that a lot of people aren't aware of.
Right. Right.
Then you have the internal side. So, you know, I've been a biohacker my whole life. I've
Right.
messed myself up plenty of times. It comes with the
I'm sure.
territory.
Of course.
But even now, sometimes, during the day, my wife will notice, like, hey, are you all right? Like, seem a little. And I'm like, I miscalculated a bit. I took a supplement, this or that, a little
Mm.
miscalculation. And then, amazing wife. She cares about me. You know, she's
Mm,
like, anything I can do to help, this or that. And then eventually I got to tell her, I'm like, listen, babe, nothing you can do can fix this. It's
mm,
not an external trigger or thought I need to get out. It
right,
is a biochemical internal issue
right,
that by tomorrow will be
sure,
totally back to normal.
right,
But I know the difference because I know the supplements.
sure.
How many
Makes
people are
sense.
crossing their wires and thinking, my life sucks. My external life is so much more stressful
Right,
when it's the 6 supplements they're on that are jacking up their adrenaline. So I try to work with my clients to at least educate you about every possible food, supplement, or
right,
lifestyle habit that can affect your internal biochemistry.
right, right. Yeah, I was about to say coffee, right? How many of us, I mean, I
Yep.
see this in my patients and clients all day long, right?
Yep.
That people are, we like half jokingly, but with great pain. And, as a primary care provider in New York City, called it the New York cocktail, right?
Yep.
Of like Adderall all day,
Oh,
Xanax all evening with
yep.
a vodka martini, and then, of course, some sleeping pill. Take your
Yep.
pick,
So
right?
unnecessary. And yeah,
Well,
people
people
may
don't
disagree
know
with
another
this.
way, right?
Well, they don't know another way. And, I may get some people might disagree with this, but I personally think, and this is lowballing it, I think 95% of anxiety, depression, sleep, ADHD medications are absolutely not necessary for people.
Mm,
They're guessing.
yeah.
I'm depressed. Give me a drug that raises
Oh,
serotonin. Did they even check if
100%.
the serotonin's low? Maybe your serotonin is low due to a vitamin D deficiency, due to another genetic mutation, due to a methylation mutation, and you're just
Mm,
taking this drug that causes these issues. So,
yeah.
yeah, the internal versus external anxiety, I try to educate people around that. And, even with coffee, you can have mutations in the receptors that caffeine blocks that makes you much more anxious on coffee.
Oh, I can't think about coffee too much.
Yeah, I do all right on caffeine. I literally weigh my dosage to make sure it's not
Do
too
you? Oh,
much,
I
but
love that.
teacrine, also called theacrine. You may want to
Hmm.
try that. It's a xanthine in the same plant family
Mm,
as caffeine, plant derived. It works similarly, same mechanism, but it is much smoother. Does not raise blood pressure, much less anxiety. For me personally, it wasn't enough of a kick for me. I like a little kick before
mm.
the gym,
Oh, yeah.
but for people that are very sensitive, that's been a life changer for them. This is what caffeine should feel like.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, all these little things you could really
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Why don't I respond well to that? And I could help show what's a possible alternative for that.
Yeah. So, what can the average bear who maybe needs to save up a bit to meet with you, or
Mhm.
who, isn't in the place where they can do the full deep dive?
Yep.
What can they do to start helping themselves?
Yeah, I
Seems like
think,
discontinue all supplements and all
well,
drugs and stop everything. Don't do
yeah.
that.
Well,
I didn't
yeah,
say to do
I do th
that.
I do think I think allergy testing, food allergy testing can be very
Mm,
important for people. Histamine, people
yeah.
think of histamine, they think of
Yeah.
allergies.
Sure.
Histamine can be so much more than that. High
Yeah.
histamine lowers serotonin and dopamine production in the brain, linked to anxiety. They use antihistamines for sleep and anxiety medications.
Yes.
So what does too much histamine do? It
Right.
can make you anxious. My histamine issues are brain fog, fatigue, lethargy. These are some of the first things I help myself with. Um,
Mm,
and turns out I was severely allergic to peas and almonds. I ate them every day for
random.
lunch at lab.
Sure.
And I was severely allergic to mice. I worked with them every day for 6 years.
Oh, come on.
All
Oh,
I got
buddy.
was brain fog, anxiety, lethargy, and wouldn't sleep very well. I wish I
Yeah.
got hives. I would
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
figured it out
Sure. Of
years
course.
ago.
Of course. Of course.
So I'm not saying this happens to everybody, but histamine is excitatory for the brain. And then
Right.
it also goes into what foods are high in histamine. Coffee's very high in histamine. I don't do well on
Mm,
coffee. A
mm,
lot of people, if you drink coffee and don't feel more alert, the histamine, like I've seen these memes how it's like when coffee raises your heart rate but doesn't wake you up. You know what that means? That means the caffeine is working, but the histamine is going to your brain and masking the
right.
cognitive benefits. Apple cider vinegar. Vinegars are very high in histamine. So I work with people, they start their morning off with apple cider vinegar,
Right.
which does
Super common.
have gut healing benefits. It
Right.
does have benefits. I'm here to show the possible negatives and educate you so you can experiment and learn for yourself.
Right.
You start the morning off with black coffee and apple cider vinegar. No wonder why you have brain fog. No wonder why you're anxious. And you get rid of those. You switch to a natural caffeine pill. You may feel so much better. Try and think, pickles. I get brain fog right away if I have them. Tomatoes are high in histamine. So
Wow.
I educate based on the mutations.
Right.
How bad are the histamine issues? I may tell you, let's remove these for the time being. People are be like, I really love my coffee though. I'm like, trust me, let's give it a month.
Yeah.
Then you can go back and try these foods.
Sure.
They feel
Makes
better
sense.
for many reasons beyond just that.
Yeah.
They go back and have the foods. They're like, you know what, Tyler? You were
Yeah.
right. I was
Yeah.
just fogging myself up every day.
Wow.
How can you tell what's triggering you if you're always triggered?
Of
How
course.
can you tell what's giving you a headache if you always have a headache, if you
Right.
always have brain fog? So my job is to help you through targeted supplements and dietary changes, get
Yes.
you feeling better as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Since we're so targeted, people can feel remarkably better in a week or less at times.
That's
Then you can
amazing.
understand. Now I have the contrast. I feel good now. I did something, I ate something. Now I feel bad. You go back and Google, oh, Tyler
Right.
said I was sensitive to
Right.
salicylates or glutamate. What do you know? That food was high glutamate. Maybe that's what that is. And they connect the dots for themselves. But you have to know
Amazing.
where the dots are, right?
Right.
And it's
Right.
what I do very well is see these dots and
Right.
see those
Pattern
patterns.
recognition. Right. What food allergy testing are you
So I recommend
really
a
loving
lot
these
of,
days?
yeah,
Because I feel like I've used every lab.
a lot of people confuse food sensitivity tests for food allergy tests.
Hmm.
Food sensitivity tests are more of a gut issue. An
Hmm.
allergy test is body-wide immune system issue.
Right.
I like skin prick tests or IgE. E is an Eric, not
Yep.
IgG.
Yeah.
IgG are for sensitivities. The skin prick test is what showed me about those initial issues for me. I recommend all my clients get an IgE comprehensive food allergy test. Environmental's cool, but are you really going to move across the country just because
No.
the allergy test? So the food you can control a
Right.
lot better. And then
Yeah.
again, if we also figure out which gene, maybe you don't break down histamine in the brain as well, maybe not in the gut as well. Maybe a
Right.
certain gene in your mast cells is overactive. So these are three different mechanisms that we could support naturally on
Right.
top of lowering your histamine consumption, lowering the allergic food consumption that can move the needle so much for people in such a short
Yeah.
period of time.
Yeah. And what's beautiful about that is IgE, and I remember E for emergency,
Mhm.
right? Because those tend to be the anaphylactic ones,
Yep.
right? You can get that through your primary care provider,
Well,
right?
the
You
well
don't
the issue
have to
the issue with that though is I had to go to 5 different allergists to get my skin prick test because they
really.
told they told me you don't have allergies, you don't have the
Oh,
eyes, the itching, the sneezing,
sure.
and I'm like I'm looking online. It's linked to brain fog. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
being poisoned at my lab each day. I thought I was being
Oof.
poisoned by chemical fumes. Turns out I would get to
Wow.
lab after the gym feeling great, check on my mice, inhale fumes, dump my histamine, go have
Jeez
lunch, eat the
Louise.
foods, dump my
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
histamine.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fifth one, more holistically minded, finally tested me. I came up positive for a lot of things. And
Wow.
that's what's so frustrating because these doctors, these allergists, they're not trained like this. They think either no allergies or you're going to die from anaphylaxis. That's conventional medicine. You're
Yeah.
fine or you're very, very
Or,
sick.
yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. How amazing to give people somewhere in between, right?
Yes. Yep. That spectrum's
Amazing.
huge. And that's why I say what I do is holistic genetic health optimization. I want
Right.
to optimize your life. I want to help you thrive each and every
Yeah.
day, like I think each person deserves to.
I agree. I would agree. So, Doc, this is all so amazing. And it's just so incredible to be offering people just this way to understand the previously ununderstandable, right? What are the take-home messages that you want people as we close this first conversation, because we'll definitely be having you back soon, but are there any take-homes you really want to make sure people get?
I think people should, instead of always wondering what supplement can I add to help things, if you're already taking several supplements, it may be one of the supplements that could be making you feel more stressed.
Yeah.
Especially if there's supplements that can make you feel good in the short term, maybe you don't need long term that are now overwhelming the body. And really try to check in with yourself and try to identify, how do I feel soon after meals? A lot of my issues were stemming from foods I was eating. I've always treated my body like a temple. I've always eaten clean. It's
Yeah.
not about eating clean or processed garbage. There's
Right.
so many foods that are healthy for us that can have certain natural components that individual people may not genetically process
Right.
as well. So trying to understand, nothing randomly happens. You don't randomly get brain fog. Something happened. So if you ate something that's very healthy, but you notice you have more brain fog or you feel a little more anxious afterwards, and maybe looking into things like, is that thing high in sulfur, which
Right.
can release histamine? Histamine is excitatory for the brain. Or is it high in histamine? Or am I allergic to that food, which will
Right.
also dump histamine, whether it
Right.
has high sulfur or not?
Right.
Glutamate could be another potential one. And I
Right.
don't say this to you guys, don't take this as in I can never eat any of those things again. That's
Sure.
why we have the genetic testing. Not everyone needs to avoid everything,
Right.
but trying to figure out, when do I feel dysregulated? Could it be food? Or again, really understanding, why am I feeling this way? Maybe it was a
Mm.
childhood pattern that's
Right.
repeating again, that's reminding your amygdala, reminding your subconscious about something bad that happened to you. And I'm not saying acknowledging that will instantly vaporize the anxiety, but at
Certainly
least
not.
now
But
you can be more cognizant
right.
of why this is happening. You're not getting sicker. You're not dying because you had that. It could be a trigger that happened, and
Right.
then you ate a high histamine food an hour before that. So it's kind of doubling on top of each other. And you could
Yeah.
feel a lot more at ease, maybe not totally fine, but a lot more at ease knowing why your body's responding, how it's responding.
Amazing. Thank you for putting such a beautiful bow on all of that. Some of the biggest themes we talk about here are living an intentional and authentic life where
Yes.
you're tuned into you and what's happening in your body, mind, in your spirit, in your world. And this is a really vital and necessary next layer. When we slow down and pay attention to the minutia of our lives, we create lives, like you've been saying, that
Mhm.
we really want to live. And I really thank you once again for the work you're doing in the world, for being so nerdtastic and
Mm.
spreading the gospel of genetics, and really taking a good look at what's coming into the body and how we're feeling. So I know everyone wants to follow you, learn more about you. Where can folks do that?
Yeah, so www.drtylerpanzer.com. So there's two N's, Panzner. People can forget that sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
at Dr. Tyler Panzer on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Um, and one thing I wanted to offer too, so I wanted to offer a discount code for your listeners.
Oh, wow.
Wanted to
Thank
offer
you.
like a $150 discount code that covers the
Wow.
DNA kit to work with me for the deep dive analysis. And for you guys listening now, there are payment plan options available, but I'm also just getting started. I'm really looking forward to having lots of different tiered type ways that I could transfer some of this knowledge to you. So if that deep dive isn't in full line with you right now, there's so much more great things on the way. But what would you want that code to be?
Let's do feminist wellness.
Okay.
Amazing. So I thank you so much for offering that. I was
Yeah,
not expecting
absolutely.
that. That is such a if I would highly recommend. It took me, what, 3 months to get my raw data back
Oh,
from the
nightmare.
massive
Yeah,
corporation that
yeah,
I used unwittingly in 2014, not realizing what a privacy and security nightmare they are. We're not going to name names, but it
yeah,
might be some letters and numbers together that
yeah.
are the number of code is if genes in your half of.
Yeah,
Anyway, nobody needs to get sued, but I would, in hindsight, I would just do Tyler's genetic
yep,
profile, like
yep.
way more better. And I have no financial connection to Tyler. I just think he's dope. So I'm just saying that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Thanks again, Doc. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and now just to reiterate, feminist wellness on my
Yeah,
website.
the
You
name
guys
of the
checking
show.
out
Yeah.
$150 off of that, and really hope you guys got some great knowledge and value out of this. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
My nerds. That was so amazing. I learned so much talking with Dr. Pansner. We had such a blast, as I'm sure you could tell. And I promised at the top of the show that I would share with you where you can download a video of him reading my genetics. It was mind blowing and incredible. And like I said, it's been about 3 months and I feel way better in several really key ways. And I'm so grateful. So I'm excited to get labs again at 3 months, at 6 months, and a year, and to just really keep being present to how I feel on his supplement regimen and off. I was taking a number of things that were really making me feel worse. So if you want to hear him geeking out on my genetics, head on over to victoriaalbina.com/the number 2, the number 8, the number 6, which is the episode number. And you can download this whole video of him talking all about my COM team, my SUA, like so many interesting genetic mutations and what to avoid taking, what to take. It's brilliant. I really like his low supplement approach. I think it is phenomenal as someone who, yeah, I think I've overprescribed. I've definitely put myself on way too many supplements in the past. And yeah, this is a really nice new framework for looking at healthcare and looking at really individualized personal care. So, anyway, I could clearly nerd out about this for hours, but I shan't. Go forth, download that talk, that video. Let me know what you think of it. If you enjoyed it, share with the good people and be well. Thanks for listening. Let's do what we do. Gentle hand on your heart should you feel so moved. And remember, you are safe. You are held. You are loved. And when one of us heals, we help heal the world. Be well, my beauty. Mwah! I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.